prepared to renew their mandate. On Diamond Live tonight, we speak with UPND consultant Oliver Shalala to review the 4 years of the UPND in government. Comrade, good evening. Thank you so much for making time to be a part of us tonight.
Yeah, good evening, Andrew, and also good evening to the viewers who are watching us on whatever platforms we are appearing in. And thanks for having invited me. It's a pleasure to be here after quite a long time. I enjoyed the studios. I think you've done some very good innovations. Congratulations to Diamond TV for that.
Thank you so much. Are you a huge fan of the Chipolo Polo?
Very much. I actually own 2 women's football teams.
Nice.
So I have about 56 female footballers employed in my team and about 16 members of staff. So it's actually one of the main things I do in my life. So I'm a very much a football man. I'm a FAS counselor and so on and so forth. So we still have hope. We don't have a very good team, but we have the fighting spirit. I think we are able to sneak a draw or even maybe lose now and still be able to just sneak through to the next round. I'm quite positive.
Fantastic.
I'm hoping when we are done, we won't hear something negative.
I hope and pray so as well. My prediction is 2-1 in favor of Morocco.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
2-1 wouldn't be bad. 2-1 wouldn't be bad because on goal difference we might just sneak it through on 2 points. Yeah.
Well, to those that are joining us live on channel 271 on DSTV and channel 20 on GoTV, we'll give you time after 30 minutes to be able to participate, on this conversation by calling us on the number that is reflected on your screen. But also, alternatively, you can use our social media platforms. We are streaming this program live on our Facebook page. That's at Diamond TV Online. Let's get right into it, Mr. Shalala. Looking back, over the past 4 years in office, how would you assess how the UPND has performed?
I think it was a roller coaster. We started on a very shaky note. I think we are in a very stable situation. I think personally, I'm quite happy where we are, also happy where we are going, but we started in a very tough situation. There was a very debilitating debt situation that we found, and I think we spent the first 2 years always talking about what happened and how it wasn't really our fault about doing things. I think the conversation has since moved. We rarely talk about what happened before we came into office. Now we are able to talk about just what we are doing and things we are doing. So I think the 4 years, we are quite shaky when we started, but we are in a very good situation. The economy has stabilized. We've been able to do the debt restructuring. There's always a time lag between policy changes and the effect. So we understand the challenges that are there in terms of managing cost of living, but I think the fundamentals that we have put in place are clear. Everybody's agreeing that the fundamentals are okay, but now to translate that to the daily lives, that's what we need to concentrate on going forward.
We received a report from State House and most of the UPND officials and government officials claiming that you've scored 90%, over 90% of what you promised the Zambian people. Critics, throwed stones at you, stating that you are marking yourself in an exam that the Zambian people, gave you, and that the result you're giving yourself is quite ambitious, but also not realistic, because for the other Zambians, you've not done anything in the past.
Yeah, a political party has a social contract with the voters and the general public by what it promises in a manifesto. And for us, we have a manifesto that we presented before the last election, which we reduced to a 10-point plan. So if we have to, in monitoring and evaluation, or M&D, you have to set targets, and you have a baseline where you're starting from, and then you look where you've moved. So for us, it's a 10-point plan, which we have to be marked against. There will be other expectations which are not part of a 10-point plan by citizens. I think that is their right. They've got the right to complain on things that we may not have promised in that 10-point plan. But that is the reason why we are always adjusting. So at the beginning, when you start, the 10-point plan and the manifesto is an ambitious program that you put ahead, but then once you get into government, there's reality that sets in, you have to adjust. So if you look at what we promised in energy, it's not what we are doing now. We've actually done way more than what we promised, because the reality is that when we came in, we had a very debilitating drought, which is the worst in the last 30 years. So we never planned for that, we never legislated for that, and because of that, we had to come up with a different plan, which is what we are implementing now. So I think for a political party, we use a manifesto and the plan that you make, but also you adjust as you are going forward.
What was your plan on energy? Because I think the buzzword in 2021, when in 2020, 2019, when we were at the height of load shedding, what President Hakainde Hichilema kept mentioning is that when I come into office, I'm going to end, load shedding.
Which he did actually. Which he did. If you remember very well, in 2021, when we came into government, there was load shedding. I remember in January of 2022, Mamba collieries closed completely. So Mamba was doing 300 megawatts, which is core, and then they closed completely. And then when government tried to engage them, they said, no, we can't produce because we are owed 500 plus US dollars by ZESCO. So if you want us to continue, we have to renovate these machines. Please pay that money. Then government sat down with Mamba, agreed to say, okay, we can pay this debt from the ZESCO bill, and then are you able to reinvest to try and expand your plant, which they did. By February, the machine was back on track. I think it was about June when load shedding ended in 2022. But then, and that continued, I think, into early 2023. But then we had the drought of 2023, and that's when things changed. So if we follow it on face value, the load shedding that we found, we did finish. Then we had now a bigger drought that has not been seen. If you remember very well, there was a drought in Zambia around 2017, 2018. And when the PF government applied to the UN to declare a disaster, the UN refused. They said, no, that drought is not that serious. But the 2022-2023 drought was actually very serious to the point where the UN declared a disaster. And that disaster was so serious that we now had a new problem. It was not the one we promised, the level of drought. It was a bigger load shedding, which we are on course. I think anyone that wants to refuse that the numbers of what we are working on is going to end load shedding, obviously is not being truthful. Of course, the speed is not what we promised, but I think in the first phase we did meet that target. Now we have a second promise which we've made to finish the current one, which I think we are on course to do that.
Do you feel pressure when Zambians, because I think the past 2 years, Zambians have experienced the worst load shedding ever. Some people would even go for as far as 2 days without having power. When power comes, it would only come for to 3 hours, and there's been major complaints, coming in, from the people. I'd like to find out how it's been like for you, the Upnd, to explain to the people why suddenly, when you had committed to ending load shedding, and it's in people's homes. How has it been in explaining that to people that we found a drought and we're trying to work around this drought?
The surprising thing is that if you follow sentiments, even on your page, if you check on your page any program that deals with load shedding, you find that most of the citizens understand. They understand what the problem was. They understand it's a legacy issue which could have been addressed with more historical investment from the 1960s. If you look at most of the power plants, we've been relying on hydropower. We never thought about expanding coal production. We never thought about expanding solar. I think when we were coming into government, solar, I think it was somewhere around 60, 70 megawatts only. But now we're talking about 300, 400 megawatts, which is quite a jump in the last 1 year and a half only. So the only solar that we had was Bangweulu, which is in the M phase here in Lusaka, and then we had Itimpi, which is under CEC. But also you have to remember CEC also was done 2021 under UPND. So the solar, the only one that was there, really a big one, was the one in M phase. So we didn't really have a serious solar program in the country, but there's been a huge change after we've come in. Currently, I think we are running at about 400 plus in terms of solar. So this year alone, we've been able to put about 350 on solar alone, so which is quite good. Then also on coal, we've only had 3 power plants, which is Dangote, about 40 megawatts. Then we have United Fertilizer, Capital Fertilizer in Shilanga, which is recently launched, is producing about 85 megawatts. 45 is used internally, then the rest is put on the grid. And then we have Mamba, the old one, the 300, which we found, I think it was launched under the PF government. So, but we've had serious investments now. Now, remember that 300 megawatts of coal by Mamba plus the other 2, the one at United Capital Fertilizer and the one at Dangote, when you add them, it was only giving us 415 megawatts of coal. Zimbabwe, on the other hand, just Hwange alone, one station, is producing 1,500 megawatts of coal. So 3 times what the whole country is producing here in Zambia. And yet we have enough coal, which can last us about 200 years and a lot of...
what's stopping us from using
So what has stopped us is we have not really taken it seriously to invest. Now, a coal plant takes a year plus to develop. So that's a medium-term project. So for us to work towards this load shedding, coal wasn't the solution because coal was going to take us a year plus to produce. That's why we put most of our effort in the solar. And the president in 2023, at the height of a drought, announced that we needed to produce 1,000 megawatts by December this year. So we haven't met the target, but if you look at the projects in the pipeline, 50 megawatts in Mansa, 100 in Chipata, 100 in Mumbwa, 100 in Milo, in Serenge, another extra 100 in Samba with one finished already, and so many others. We are way above the 1,000. Actually, total projects that are on paper, signed, approved, everything's about 12,000 megawatts. For solar alone, I think we're talking about 2,000, 3,000, which have been either in procurement or actual construction. So the target that we set for this year, we haven't met, but if you look at the next few months of 2026, there will be quite a jump in the availability of power based on, yes. But to answer your question really is that people have been quite understanding. It's not something that we take lightly, that Zambians have been quite patient to understand. They know, because they understand the steps needed to be taken. For example, just to expand, even on the hydro itself, we haven't had a hydropower plant done since Kafue Gorge Lower. And Kafue Gorge Lower was completed under the UPND, but if we follow the history, it was scoped under Kaunda. Then it was planned under Mwanawasa. It was RB that did the first contract, even brought the Chinese to start working. Then he lost power in November 2011, and then the PF cancelled that contract. So we lost about, I think, 6, 7, 8 months of construction. Then they decided to renew the contract. By the time we were starting Kafue Lower, it was a bit later. I think it was under the President Edgar Lungu that construction really took off. And then by the time we were coming in power, it was not even done. It was only at 150 megawatts. So we had to complete the plant. So you can see how long it took from Kaunda's days to the time it finished. So
we're partially discussing the issues of electricity yesterday on Costa. And part of what we are getting from the community is that, yes, indeed, there's a huge improvement in power availability in people's homes. But most people are attaching the availability of power to the fact that we're going into an election. How are you convincing Zambians that it's not because of an election that they have this power, but because of the projects that you've explained that government is embarking on?
It's not.
Or perhaps maybe the coincidence of having power and we're going into an election year. What a coincidence!
I think that is of interest to the opposition. For the citizens, they really don't care whether there's an election or not. All they care is there's power. Okay. Now, for the UPND, we don't do things short term, which are not going to be sustainable. So the UPND programming, if you look at it, whether it's in education, it's in energy, it's whatever, it's never meant for short term appeasement. So you will not see a single project under energy that is meant for short-term appeasement. If you wanted to do short-term appeasement, to appease the voters, what all we had to do was get electricity on import and then provide it to the citizens, and there's power. But then 3 years down the line, we can't sustain the payments. We found a problem when we came. For example, when there was a drought and we went to Mozambique to go and get power, Mozambique refused and said, there's a Congole here, you guys haven't paid. Because unfortunately, under the previous government, there was a default, they couldn't pay. So we have avoided that, whether it's petroleum, whether it is fertilizers, whether it is even the current issue of the farmers. We are avoiding a situation where you are borrowing unnecessarily to pay off for short-term appeasement. So citizens, I think, have been quite positive to work with the government in understanding that, okay, we have to do it sustainably. So we have to make sure development now does not affect future generations. So it's not about next year. If we wanted to do things for next year, we wouldn't be doing the coal plants we are doing. We are doing 3 coal plants right now under construction. One is Mamba Collieries, 300 megawatts, which is about $400 million. Then there's one which is being done by Evergrande in Sinazongwe, which is about 500 million for 600 megawatts. Then another one in Sinazongwe, again, Sinazeze this time, called Mulungwa. So those 3 are under construction, not promised, paid for, everything under construction. There's a lot of effort we had to put. We had to build the road from Batoka to Sinazongwe. And that's a road paid for by the Treasury, not in Congole, where we tell Chinese to build, we'll pay you later. No, these are roads paid for. So we had to build a new road tarmac from Batoka to Sinazongwe to make sure that machines that are needed are able to pass through. Now, if you
we're having electricity. And we've been speaking to residents of different communities. And what they're telling us is that, yes, we're having this electricity, but we know it's because of an election. This is not the opposition.
The election is next year.
Yes, this is not the election is just in the next, next very few months.
No, the election is next year.
The next parliament is getting dissolved in May.
Okay, let me ask you.
In the next 4 months.
Do the citizens want electricity next year or this year? They want it now.
They want it now, but it's closer to an election.
No, like I said,
I'm giving you feedback.
That is of interest to those who are against the UPND.
So I'm giving you feedback of what people are saying, and I'm giving an example that our newsroom goes into this.
Okay, so who would you quote as an authority on that opinion?
In this regard, I'm quoting the Zambian citizens.
No, who did you? Can you mention the particular person so I can show you the categorization? Because I'm telling you to say, the way you are mentioning it, if there's an institution that has got outreach compared with Diamond TV more, it is us. Us, we've got branches, we've got wards, so we are able to, even our media team is much bigger than Diamond TV because we are able to have people in every location. So we are able to get feedback. We have a research bureau under the UPND. So I can tell you to say, when you find out, when you ask to say, do people really care about whether it is this year, next year, or whatever? It's never the issue. The issue is about...
So you're not concerned as a UPND when people say that will not be woodwinked to think
that is an opinion. So how can you be concerned about an opinion?
So you're not concerned about the opinion?
It's a democracy. Listen, in a democracy, that's the difference between us and those who were there before. In those days, if you just stood up and said, you were beaten up. Even now, when I'm on Diamond TV, if I was opposition those days, they'll be waiting for me outside. Before I can come out, I'll be beaten. It doesn't happen anymore. HH had to come out through the roof. Those days, opinions are very healthy, and sometimes we use them for feedback to understand. So, for example, when we get that somebody is telling us we are improving energy, you see, there are two ways of looking at it: a glass half full or glass full. So, for me to tell me that my right denial, but it's because of elections. I take the first part, which is my right denial,
and the second part you don't care.
No, it's an opinion. So, why should you have a problem with somebody's opinion? It's a democracy. Part 3 of the Constitution has got a part which is in the Bill of Rights. You can't even remove that part of that referendum, which talks about freedom of expression, freedom of association, and so on and so forth. So those are opinions, and it's understood. But what is important is for us to understand that the UPND does not do things for short-term appeasement. You can pick any topic now. I'll be able to speak. Off-cuff figures, I'll give them to you. Education. Education, if we wanted to appease people, we would not do free education. Let me finish. If we wanted to appease the people, and it's about election, we wouldn't have done free education. Do you know why? Because free education, for someone to start grade 1 today, by the time they finish 7 years primary, add 5 years of secondary, add 4 minimum of college, that is already 16 years. That person, for them to be happy about the education we gave them, to vote for us, is 16 years from now. Most likely, I might not even be in politics myself by then. So if we were doing it for the appeasement, we wouldn't do free education. But, if we were doing it for appeasement, we would not be doing... let me finish.
You're not providing free education.
No, we are providing free education.
You're not providing free education at tertiary level.
Yeah, but I'm explaining to you to say, once we provide 7 years of primary and 5 years of secondary, that's 12 years. Okay? Now, that person will only finish and start working after they've done tertiary. And now remember that a good number of them actually even get bursaries and new allowances. So we have a very good percentage of them that actually benefit beyond the secondary school. For the first time, Mulungushu University, Charimbana, and others which are public sector and now have bursary, which was not happening before. And then we have new allowances across. So actually, to go against what you are saying, we even have free education for tertiary for selected few who are chosen on merit. So for those...
We've always had that.
We never had those numbers. We never had.
We've always had free.
No. When I was going to UNZA in 1994, the whole university was 5,000 people. And the CBU was probably 2003. So you're talking about the whole country, maybe university. There was no UNLAS, there was no ZICAS. Maybe you're talking about 7,000, 10,000 university students. Let me finish. But now, UNZA alone is about 25,000. Then when you look at the bursaries, how many are those? 10,000 plus. So when you look at the absolute numbers, even percentages, we've done quite a lot. If you wanted to appease people for the sake of elections, we wouldn't do all these things long term. But Hakainde Chilema, together with his party, look at the sustainable development. We would have done easy things. Fuel would have continued subsidizing to please people, which we're not doing.
And perhaps maybe let's come to fuel. prior to 2021 elections, when President Upnd was in opposition, I think what was promised was very clear.
Yeah.
That when he comes into office, he's going to remove middlemen, and at this time, fuel was selling at 17 kwacha.
Yeah.
President Upnd told the Zambian people that the Patriotic Front are still in 3 kwacha from this, and they've put middlemen. When we come into office, we're going to knock out a 3 kwacha. We'll make fuel be sold at 13 kwacha and 14 kwacha. It's been over 4 years. Zambians have been subjected to monthly reviews of fuel prices, which the president criticized. In fact, when he ushered in a new PS, one of the first instructions he told him was to work around, this issue. But up until now, things haven't changed.
But isn't that beautiful?
Fuel is very expensive.
But isn't that beautiful that the president
two times more than how it was under President Edgar Lungu?
Yeah, but isn't it beautiful that the president can actually be against something, but the party...
do it.
Let me finish. But the party can sometimes advise the president, no, let's continue with this for this reason number 1, 2, 3, and then later on we adjust later. Now, listen, the first thing that you have to look at is that the first part of the promise was made within months, which is the middleman part. When we came, we found more than 500, 600 million, actually $800 million of debt owed to OMCs. The government would just get fuel, give people cheaply the 17,000 you're talking about, 17 kwacha you're talking about. That was not the real price of the fuel. That was subsidized.
Yes, it was.
So if you add the 800 million that was supposed to be paid by government but it was failing to pay, it means that the real price was probably maybe 24, 25. So now that 800 million was not even being paid. The OMCs at some point, that's why you were having all these shortages, because no one is paying. It's like the same thing as university students. You have bursaries, UNZA is not getting the money for bursaries, and then UNZA goes in debts. So it was a mess across the economy.
So to have suggested that...
Let me finish. So I'm answering the question. So when we came, the first thing we did was we removed the need for government to procure and the middleman part. So we said, okay, from now on, OMCs will procure directly on their own. So petrol, for example, has never had any change. It's only now when we're looking at now a bulk purchase plan. But from the time the Upnd came, petrol has been brought in directly by the OMCs and they sell at market price. The Ministry of Energy comes in to sort of like help in terms of manage the price so it doesn't go out of sync. Obviously, there are things like review of the exchange rate. You look at what the international market price of a barrel of crude is, and so many other, excise duty and other things that come in terms of calculation. Then from there, you agree with the OMCs and other players. So the Upnd did that part. They removed the middlemen, they removed the procurement. As we speak, the only date that is there on fuel is the one we found. And it increased because of interest and the failure to pay. And remember that there was no ability to pay the debts. November 2020, Zambia defaulted. We were supposed to be paying about 5 billion debt every year. Zambia only paid 900 million in 2020. Same thing as 2021. And even now, we are still paying about 900 million. And this time is different. The 2020 and 2021 was a default, whereby instead of paying the 500 million, sorry, the 5 billion, you are paying 900 because you just don't have the money. Then we had to restructure. The previous government tried an IMF and the World Bank bailout. It failed. We came in, pushed, and finally we got it. But we've just finished the bailout program now. And you can even see that suddenly we are able to do roads and other things because the austerity measures have been stopped. So again, when you talk about those things of it's being done because of elections, it's not because of elections. We are now done with the IMF bailout. There are things we couldn't do under the IMF bailout, which we are able to do, which are helping. For example, solar. We are able to invest in solar almost at a loss for future gain. For example, there's a program which is Kiona, under ZESCO, a subsidiary of ZESCO, which is putting solar panels in Chongwe, Ibex area, Silveris and other areas for free. They put the solar on top of your house, and then all you do is you're just paying the units. Now, it will look like a waste in the short period, but eventually that comes to help the country because we have more power. Now, my point is that we didn't get to the 17 kwacha, and there are many factors, not an excuse, but many factors. For example, no one saw the Ukraine Russia war coming. It came. No one saw the COVID-19 disaster coming, but it came. And then even the drought itself. So there were many factors that exacerbated us having a very good petroleum marketing scenario. But we have to agree that in the last 12 months, there's been a reduction in the price of petroleum, both petrol and diesel, because of some of the interventions that have been taken. For example, the open access on the diesel side. But on the petrol, obviously, there hasn't been much, which we've done. So the bulk purchase will help reduce all that. On diesel, I think we've done quite a good job.
So we must, the Zambian people must forget, the 14 quarter fuel.
There's no, I think at the time when the president was speaking in context, it was doable if it had happened just there. But then after the president took over and all this, the Russia-Ukraine war, COVID-19 and all this.
So it's not realistic that
at the moment, no. And secondly, Andrew, you don't have prices going down in an economy. There's no country which has no inflation. Every country will always have inflation. Prices never go down.
Are you sure?
No, they never.
I don't think so. The price of millimil around January to February was around 380 kwacha to 410.
Yes.
Now the price of millimil is 230
because of the spike. So the increase to 380 was not a normal increase. That's not organic. When prices are increasing organically, you are going to have you won't have a reduction because that's an organic growth. The one that happened last year was a spike where abnormally we have no rains, and suddenly the price just shoots because we just don't have the millimil. And then you have to go and get out of the country, and then we have restrictions like we don't allow GMO maize and things like that. It became problematic. Then you've got people who are smuggling into Congo. So it spiked. So the spiking is not normal. So it's the same thing as the price of petroleum during the Ukraine-Russia war. For a short period, it spiked. But it came down to about normal. So once it gets to normal, it will keep increasing because there's always inflation. So what is important in that scenario for a government is to, one, arrest inflation to ensure that it comes down. We found it, I think, about 30%. It's somewhere around 11, and I think the last quarter of this...
You've heard what people have been saying about the Upnd and government, that you are so much preoccupied with macroeconomic indicators. You want to speak numbers, you want to talk about the GDP and inflation. But what people care about is how this translates into the living conditions of our people.
No, you can't build a house from the roof coming down.
And so people don't care about those numbers. What people care about is millimil cheaper?
No, they do care.
Cheaper?
Look, the people who eat millimil are even 40% of the country. So if someone is actually putting millimil as a campaign topic, it's misguided. Because the rest of the country don't even buy. Actually, the ones who eat millimil, this millimil we sell, some of them produce it on their own. So if we follow it as a topic, political issue, it's misguided because we have 65% of Zambians living outside the urban areas. So they produce their own maize, they eat on their own. So you can't even use it as a big political campaign. Yes, for the urban people it's important, but a lot has been done, Andrew. We have produced the highest maize possible now at 3.7 million metric tons for the first time. I think the next highest also was under UPND, 3.6, 2022. And there's a trajectory. And a lot has been done. We've been able to ensure that the FISIP has expanded about 3 times the numbers we used to have. We no longer import fertilizer. We produce it in Zambia. So there's a lot we've done in that to ensure that we have enough maize to eat.
It's good you're saying that there's a lot that the UPND government has done. You've had these critics that argue, in fact, even the Zambian people, that people that call in would argue that the UPND have done so much on the ground, but yet they fail to explain clearly to the Zambian people, point by point, what they've done. Have you had these, issues come your way?
You cut me on.
They say that it's both on the side of government and the side of the political.
No, you cut
party.
me on the last point. The point of we take so much emphasis on the fundamentals of the macroeconomy. So the reason is that it's a timeline. So for the activities we've been doing 2021, 2023 to now, it's more about macroeconomy stabilization. And then that's when you have what we call, there's what we call a policy lag. So if you change a policy, there's always a lag first in terms of implementing the policy, in terms of changing the laws and all that. Even after you've changed compliance, and by the time it is taking effect to improve the lives, there's a time lag. So some of these policies that we've changed, the time lag is within this period. We'll be seeing the effects much later. It's the same thing as electricity. What we started doing last year and this year is only now that we are seeing those positive steps. So that issue of saying we are doing so much but it can't be explained, it's because we still have a problem of education. No wonder we've introduced free education. You have to have an erudite citizenry to understand some of these things, macro level and things like that. So we can't really blame it just on the UPND or the government.
You think you've done enough to explain what you've done?
No, it will show with time. My point is that there's what we call police lag. Some of the things, no matter how you explain, a person will only really appreciate when the actual benefit manifests. So some of the benefits will manifest with time.
And I'll put context to what I'm saying. The last time I featured Laura Miti, she was stating that, look, the UPND have done so much things, especially on the economic front, all right? But they've been preoccupied with the politics. Instead of explaining, the developmental things that they've done, they've been preoccupied with the politics of the Patriotic Front. Would you agree?
No, I think the Patriotic Front is not even something to be preoccupied of. I think you've just made me say it for the first time in this show. I haven't mentioned PF from the time we started the show. So it's not something that even bothers us. So Laura, again, what Laura is saying is an opinion. But the same Laura spends more time criticizing the UPND on the politics, never on the economy. I think she's been very clear. On the economy, this is the best government. That's what she says. So you haven't quoted that part, but I'll say it for the viewers. Laura's been very clear. When it comes to the economy, this is the best government you can put in place. So she understands. She knows that with time, eventually...
Do you think you have a good team as a UPND to explain what...
You mean as a media team?
As a media team.
I think, firstly, I can't blow my own trumpet, but I think we are willing to do the work. The UPND is not like the way the PF was or the MMD, where these positions that were so recruitive. We are almost like volunteers. We do it for the passion. Even what we get normally is very modest. So you find that the reason why the UPND media and others is very strong is because these are people who take it upon themselves to do it. Personally, I've been in the media team while working for a mine in Lower Zambezi. Last time I was here being interviewed, probably the last time I was here ever, I was talking about the mine. So, like I mentioned, I employ about 56 footballers and others. My wage bill is quite huge, about 160. I've been doing that before I was in the media team of the UPND. So I did not go into the media team to be paid or to make money. It's that passion. And that's the reason why you find that we are doing so much that now, the complaint is that we are all over the place. Too many press conferences, too many shows, but we have to, because they say too many press conferences, but you have to speak. And maybe to preempt you, I think when you showed me the script, there was an issue of we are being accused to be reactive, and we should be proactive. Now, Andrew, you have to understand that in media, I was quite senior in the Post newspaper before. I think my position, digital content manager and news editor, was like number 5 from the owner of the paper. So I was quite senior, so I would attend management, and I've worked for Unza Radio, I've worked for Movie TV before. So I've worked both in print and in broadcasting, radio and TV, and I've also done social media, so many. I'm quite experienced. What I'll tell you is that anyone who thinks a ruling party should be proactive doesn't understand communication. For me, I was very privileged when I was young. I was involved in the presidential campaigns under MMD, and we lost. And I learned my lessons then to a point where I bring to the UPND very strong skills on how to avoid losing, like we lost in 2011. So the issue of are we reactive or proactive, a ruling party media team should be quite reactive, because it's not for you to throw onto the throats of people topics. It's not for us to wake up in the morning and say, Zambia today we are discussing free education. For example, today Zambia unveiled a new plane for the flying doctor service. Okay, and the Minister of Minister of Health was launching that Beechcraft B200, which is a 8-seater plane, the 3rd plane which the UPND has bought. When we came, Flying Doctor Service only had 1 plane, which was working. Right now, as we speak, they've got 4 planes and 1 helicopter. For the first time, January, we bought a helicopter, which was not there. Now, when that was being discussed, Zambians were still talking about Chilewan's Matereto yesterday. And you can't stop them, because that is what they decide to do. But when they come to us to say, explain about this, we should be ready. So the reactive part has to be there. It has to be, we have to be ready to respond. We have to be able to explain. But the proactivity part is very minimal. It's not for us really to dictate down the throats of
So for you to say, now we've achieved debt restructuring, we must talk about this.
But we do that.
Now we've done this,
But we do that. For example, if we were not good at explaining, I don't think we would have had that much support, for example, over Bill 7. Bill 7 had so much support. There were so many people against it. There were so many forces, media, programs and everything. But I think the UPND media team did a very good job on that one. Anyone that says otherwise is just not being honest. So we do stand up. We do talk about these things. For example, today we wrote a lot about the Flying Doctor Service, shared stories and all that to people. But sometimes Zambians will choose what they want to listen to.
Don't you think Bill 7 did divide the country to a larger extent?
I don't know to what extent the division is new. I think the battle lines were already drawn before it even came on the table. So we know who was on that side, who was against Bill 7, and we know who was on our side for Bill 7. Most of it was already like that even before. I don't think at the end of it we had more people against. I think we had less. Because most of the people that were against MPs, who were against opposition, eventually voted for it. And right now, if you listen to the voices, it's just the few people like Beauty Katewe, Linda Kasonde, Longisani, and maybe Brebna, who and maybe more Sampa, who talk about Bill 7. Most people have understood this law now, and we've moved on. It's about implementation. How do we do the limitation so that it benefits?
Yeah. You don't think along the way, especially with this Bill number 7, you created a lot of enemies that perhaps could work against you and perhaps even decampaign you? I remember very vividly when an interview was conducted with Beauty Katebe. She was very clear that if the UPND passed Bill 7, it would cost them a vote.
From who? Because Beauty Katebe is speaking as chairperson for NGOCC. Her members are against her. You saw NGOCC in Chipata going against the mother body and saying, no, for us, we support the Bill 7. We want to have. And members have actually stood up a number of times trying to even call for a Congress to look at whether her term is still valid. Even the same thing has happened in Laz. So for me, if you say, we are going to have a problem with voters because of that collective against Bill 7. Okay, where's the larger group? Because if you look at the PF, the MPs, even those who were with Munduvile, a number of them left him and came to vote for Bill 7. Those who were with Luwinda came to vote. Those who were with Mausampa came to vote. So, and these have got a large following. For example, I do not see Kanchibiya people being against the UPND because of delimitation with all they have done. There's a lot which has been done in Kanchibiya. Today, this afternoon, for the first time in Chalawesa, in Kanchibiya, they were putting street lights. Something they've never seen. So a person who's in Kanchibiya, who's never seen a civic center until this year, who's never seen offices for teachers and whatever until this year, we've seen that kid, the famous social media activist, Chiwolori, who talks about the bridges in a community and all that. The people there are not going to vote against when they've seen the need and they understand now Kanchibiya, if it's divided in two, is going to have, instead of 40 million, 80 million. So for me, I think it's being untruthful to try and pit the UPND against the people based on Bill 7. Because Bill 7, when it was opened for submission, there was overwhelming submission. 11,800 under that short period. Compared, the highest ever was 12,200 over 3 years. There was the online submissions, there was meetings. I think we saw most of the traditional leaders were for Bill 7. I think it was only Wapula where we saw traditional leaders being against. Pezeni and these people, I think even Northern, they were for delimitation, they were also for mixed member proportional representation and so on and so forth. So for me, I don't think there are any new fault lines which were created by Bill 7. The fault lines which may exist because of Bill 7 were there pre-enactment time and even pre-presentation of the bill. And then there's also dishonesty because on 8th of March, which was Women's Day, Beauty Katebe was the one that stood up in Mansa to say we need to change the constitution so that we have women representation in parliament. Then the president said, okay, the country agrees we need to have constitutional amendment. Then there was chaos. Well, and eventually, if you remember, Beauty Katebe was for the...
From the argument from those that are against, that were against Bill 7 now, which is law, was not even the content. It was about the process.
Okay.
You know, that was what everyone was concerned about, that the process was flawed. The process was supposed to be much more consultative. In fact, even the president responded to the call of the civil society organizations that had gone to State House by deferring the bill, by asking the Minister of Justice to defer the bill. That's when we saw that technical committee being put, in place to go around. It meant that the president also saw that indeed this process lacked consultation. In fact, even the courts of law in the Celestine Kandila and Munia Zulu versus Attorney General also, did see that the process that was undertaken to initiate Bill 7 was not consultative, and that's why in rendering its judgment, it was very clear that it goes against most of the provisions of the Constitution. Yes. And then we saw, that technical committee. And so, largely, I think the issue wasn't about the content. The issue was about, let's agree on the process.
Yeah, but those opinions were subjected to the courts, and the courts actually explained themselves on those matters. So the Celestine Mkandila and Munia Zulu versus Attorney General judgment was very clear. I don't know why opposition have been trying to say the process was illegal. There's no word illegal in there. There's no word unconstitutional. There's no word that says it abrogates the law. There's only to say it's against the spirit, and then proceeds to give a relief, which is that there has to be a consultation. Now remember that the bill was deferred way before the judgment. Okay, not really way before.
Before.
Yeah, let me not say way before, because I shouldn't abuse English, but it was done before. And it was done because Laura Mitty and her friends were State House, and they went to complain and asked for the president to defer. Now, it's not the first bill to be deferred. We had Bill 3, which is Cyber Crimes Act. Then we had, Cyber Crimes Bill. And then we had Bill 4, which was Cyber Security
and the NGSC Act as well.
Again, okay. I wanted to, the ones which were very prominent was those two, the cyber laws. There was a lot of outcry, and people asked for the laws to be deferred. I can tell you, I was one of the people that submitted to the president to say, boss, I think let's defer. And the president listened. Actually, even there are a number of people who asked for the deferment, and we deferred. And then it was opened up. NGOs were asked to submit. Susan Mwape, I think, led the process of the NGOs that were making submissions, and then eventually we united it with a lot of submissions. Same with Bill 7. The problem was that it was politicized. And not just politicized. It's okay when you politicize something, but it's a problem when you go partisan politics, where you actually align Oasis Forum to particular parties. I was a member of the Oasis Forum way back when it was formed. Oasis Forum was formed 97, 98, somewhere there, just before the third part. And I was a student at UNZA, and I was very involved. Before that, we had Committee for a Clean Campaign 1996. I was a member of that. We had other programs like FODEP for monitoring and whatever in 2001. I was a member of that. So, and I actually worked for NGOCC from 2005 to 2009. And Beauty Kateli wasn't there. She was at I think Women in Law. If I can't remember. No, Women's Lobby. She was at Women's Lobby Group. So a subsidiary member. So even I can speak for NGOCC because I was a staff member there. I know what the mandate of NGOCC is, which is to work for the. But we saw the coming together of these former members of Oasis Forum to resurrect it. It wasn't there. It wasn't there. So it was. They brought it again back on track, but we saw the alignment. When they say we have a program, people who show up there are the opposition leaders. When they say we are going to do black, wearing black is the opposition, and that's where the problem was.
Anything wrong with that?
That's why people didn't support it, because they realized it was not a civil society program. It was a partisan political program. So there's a problem, because when you register an NGO, you promise not to do partisan politics. You promise to do a citizen-centered programming, which is either advocacy, lobbying, or even social development.
If the issues that you are lobbying about align with those with the opposition, I don't think it hurts.
Yeah, but at least
because even I can tell you this for a fact, that even the Upnd, when you are in opposition, some of the things that you are against, the NGOs joined you.
It was not NGOs like Oasis Forum the way it is today.
I'm telling you the truth.
It was not the way it is today.
Many of those joint press conferences where President Hakainde is there and NGOs
as a stakeholder.
Yes.
Now, did you see at any point Oasis Forum engaging the UPND, or even just to say we want to work with women in UPND? Never. There's no single event that they...
Well, the Oasis Forum did engage on Bill
No.
10.
They only went to State House. There was no single meeting where UPND members were ever invited to consult. And then two, there's no record whatsoever of Laz or the Catholics themselves or anybody who did consultation around the country. There was nothing like that. So on one part, they were saying that the UPND needed to consult, which we did and delivered. On their part, they never did any consultation.
Let's talk about the key achievements that the UPND is going with into 2026, because in my intro I did mention that it's now no longer about promises.
Yes,
it's about showing the people what you've done. What are some of the key achievements that this government has scored the past 4 years?
So like I mentioned, I think the key thing, like I mentioned, is when you're building a house, you start from the bottom. So for us, we went for stabilization of the economy. So we had to do the restructuring. I think you remember that we were laughed at. The IMF would not give the UPND the program. Zambia was the first to be given. Out of those who applied, 5 of them who applied during that period. We pushed, we were given the package. Then we were using that, we decided to use now to restructure debt. There was a lot of misgivings that UPND will fail to even discuss with China and on and on. But it happened. The UPND spoke with China and everybody. 94% of the debt has been restructured, both on agreement and signing. The remaining, in principle, is done, which is the 5%, 6%. It's agreed, but just remaining with signatures. Now, the commercial debt, which is the problematic part, is done. All of it is signed. So, meaning that the country now, which was supposed to be paying $5 billion every year, is now paying only about 900. I've heard these rumors where people say the UPND is not paying debt. That's not true. UPND is servicing debt. It's servicing about 900 million every year. So we do pay, but it's at a lower rate. So we are able now to get even some more debt to be able to infuse into the economy. So there's been this talk about, when you came into government, there was $14 billion debt, but now it has shot to about 20-something. Fair and square. If you look at debt restructuring, because we had to extend the period in which the debt will be paid, the amount grew. So if I pay the debt within a short period, the amount is smaller. So after restructuring, what was 500 million euro bond probably now had more interest, and the principal was never paid. So suddenly it ballooned. Most of the increase in the debt is not because we are borrowing a lot. Yes, we borrowed, but we borrowed only as far as concessional loans from IMF, World Bank, African Development Bank, European Bank, and these are sectors like the secondary schools program. And social cash transfer and things like that, which are meant as part of the IMF bailout. But in terms of commercial loans, to put into programming like roads, what and why, which is consumption, which people abuse for tenders and everything, we haven't done that. We couldn't do it. We are not even allowed to do it because no one is going to agree to give us until. I remember we're still in junk status. It's only 2 months ago, last month, if anything, when finally Zambia was now removed from default. Standard & Poor gave us a rating of saying stable. Moody's gave us a rating, and also Fitch gave us a rating. Almost all the credit rating institutions have moved Zambia either from unstable to CCC plus or unstable to junk status to stable and so on and so forth. So if we were to borrow today, we would borrow at a better rate. But we prefer a scenario where we expand the economy and then we make more money internally than to borrow. Even where we've borrowed, mostly it's been internally. For example, where ZESCO was not able to borrow money to import power. What do? Then we say, okay, let's go into a partnership with, for example, a private sector company, set up a plant, then you'll be selling us power. The debt for the plant is not on ZESCO books, meaning it's not on government guarantee. The risk is taken by the investor, but they are selling us the power and they're able to recoup the interest.
Let's go to second achievement.
So then infrastructure. I think people like saying the previous government did quite a lot. We've seen all these roads in Lusaka and that kind of thing. But the story is that most of those roads were not paid. They are being paid for now by the UPND. They were not paid for under the PF. And then we had just this perception of roads are being done. Zambia is a construction, that's what we were being told. But today, when we drive, if we go along Tuta Bridge from Serenje, Tuta, Mununga, come back to Mporokoso, Kasama, you find that only small sections have got proper roads. We drive from Kapirimposh to Nakonde, we have had to redo the whole road as UPND. Then you go to Chipata Lundazi, Chipata Chadiza, even Greatest Road itself was done under RRB. So you start wondering, where are the roads that were done? So it's mostly Lusaka. The kind of work we are doing in Ndola today, someone called me today telling me, you guys are not doing enough to explain what is being done on the Copper Belt because there are so many roads done. Luansha, Ndola, no question about it. UPND has outdone what has been done there in the last 10, 15, 20 years. So a lot of roads, 30 kilometers under the dual carriageway for Ndola, township roads, another, I think, 20 under the Ministry of Local Government. 50 kilometers, just one town. Luansha has had quite a lot as well. Then we have roads like, Masangano Road, and even the Ndora-Lusaka dual carriageway. So infrastructure-wise, we've done quite a lot. Batoka, Sinazonga, I mentioned it earlier. I think I didn't mention the one, Monze-Niko Road. Monze-Niko Road is easy to politicize because the president comes from somewhere there. Somebody will think it was done because the president is from there. But there's an economical plan behind that road, which is that, if you remember, we have made a target to say we are going to produce and sell to Congo $1 billion of beef. Now, the copper we sell is not a lot, 5 billion, somewhere there. So 1 billion of beef is close to the copper. We need to diversify. One of the reasons why Zambia is still considered a least developed country is that in 2021, we were given the first tick to say you can move from least developed country to low middle income country. Then we were supposed to pass again in 2024. But when we came to 2024, we were still depending on copper. We had not diversified other imports. No wonder you see Zambia working hard in energy to be able to export. Because first quarter of 2023, for the first time, electricity, we had a surplus that year. We were selling 100 to Zimbabwe from Kafue Gorge. We were selling 180 to Namibia from Kafue Gorge. We were selling about 170 to Congo. We had a surplus. For the first time, that first quarter of 2023, electricity outstripped the export of copper. Now, the difference is that when we sell electricity and the money comes into Zambia, all of it is banked. ZESCO will bank the money in Zambia. It will help show up the kwacha. That's why you've seen the kwacha is quite strong. For mines, it's different. The metal markets are in Hong Kong, they are in London, they are in whatever. So when they sell those monies...
What would you tell people that say, look, yes, you've explained all those things that you've explained, Mr. Shalala, but what people are concerned about is food on their table.
Yeah, but food on their table, food on their table has come in many ways. Firstly, we have just 1 year, 30,000 teachers employed. For every teacher, you are talking about probably 4 to 8 people that are dependent on that teacher. So 30,000 multiplied by 8 and multiply effect, maybe just 10, you're talking about 300,000 Zambians who suddenly have got food on their table. And the recruitment was not in any way political. No one has come even to say we're using UPND cadres. No. It was just open. Everybody applied. So many people rejoiced because they had no connections over the years they were employed. Another, 40-something thousand have been employed in military, health, and so on and so forth. So that is food on the table. Then when we had the drought of 2021, we had to say, okay, a lot of maize has been damaged. So we are not able to, most of the Zambians can't feed themselves. Remember that Zambia is considered one of the poorest countries in the world, number 6 in terms of poverty. It's an oxymoron because on one hand, we say that Zambia is developed more than a lot of countries. Maybe 25 countries are not as developed as Zambia, but it's considered number 6 poorest. The reason is simple. We have a high number of Zambians who live below the datum line of $2 per day. So they are the ones that make Zambia considered the poor country. And yet we've got so many who are doing very well. So this government said, okay, for us, paradigm shift. We want to decentralize development, take it to the local areas. So there's more money out there. We improve. So that's why we have this CDF program. We also said, okay, after drought, social cash transfer. We multiplied by 3 those who were receiving under the previous government. Remember, there was a minister arrested under the previous government. There was even a postmaster general who they were accused of embezzling funds. We had to do it differently. So donors left. We had to do it on our own. Eventually, some donors came back. And there's been a multiply effect, 3 times the number that was there before we came. So that's food on the table. Then we had other programs to mitigate for the poorest, the ones I mentioned, that make Zambia a poor country, through cash for work, food for work, and other programs, which we have done. So the problem now, Andrew, is that we have to keep doing this. The reason we have brought in the limitation is because we want more money to go into the provinces so that more people at that level who live below $2 can have that money. So why? How? Grants, education, and even construction projects, supplying of wood and everything for desks and things like that. It hasn't been perfect. I'll be the first one to admit that CDF has challenges, but again, the success stories are there to be seen. No one can argue. Even the issue of cash for work, I think there's been a lot of challenges on that. Some thefts in terms of double dealing and things. But these are welcome problems to have, as opposed to where we never had these things. So there are programs to put food on the table. The cost of living is still quite high, 11,000 average in Lusaka, 11,000 for a family of 5. And then the average income, I think, in Lusaka is about 5,000, 6,000. So there's a shortfall. But there's been quite a number of people that have been employed.
Mr. Shalala, we have 4 months to go before Parliament dissolves and the country enters into a 100% election mode. Opposition say that you are a one-term government. What do you have to say about that?
Like I said, we have moved beyond the rhetoric of really reacting too much to the opposition, because I don't even know who the opposition is, to be fair. Because even you now, if you tell me which is the opposition, we don't know which the opposition is. Actually, the truth is that the opposition themselves have said it. Davis Mwila, former SG, has mentioned PF is dead. Let people join other parties. Mao Sampa at some point mentioned that. There's been so many people calling to say these opposition parties are dead. Now, when you say one-term party, the moment UPND is obsessed with just coming back instead of working on the fundamentals is the day that we forget who we are. The UPND is a party built on intellectuals. We are not, a party that thrives on hooligans and pangas and that. Even today, the president was talking about having a violent-free election. So for us, it's not about rubbing it into the throats of people. It's not about beating up people to vote for us and everything. It's not even about being obsessed about being voted back. It's about just doing the right thing, knowing very well that that's what will get us back into. I think we are very confident that...
What gives you the confidence? The achievements you've highlighted?
Even just the politics. There was Bill 7. Bill 7, we did everything right. When we were told by the courts to go for consultation, we did that. When we were told take it for voting, we took it for voting, and the overwhelming support, 100%. You've
won majority of the by-elections that have occurred since 2021.
Yeah.
In the next 20 days, there's another by-election in Chawa, my seat that was previously held by Tasila Lungu. How are you looking at this election? And do you think it will set as a litmus test of what will happen next year, whether you win or you lose?
Not really. I know we'll win it. We'll win it. It's nothing to really, make too much noise about it. I think, first and foremost, the UPND has done quite well. And then the two candidates we had, first it was Mr. Kantenga, but then technically he wasn't qualified because he registered in December. He was very popular. And even Munda is a local. He's a guy that, you've seen the media going crazy about him, his quotes and all. He's like a Donald Trump. He's a guy that will be off the hinge here and there, but he's loved. He's loved, and Zambian politics usually about the love people have.
Do you think you've become unpopular along the line of Rewa's UPND?
How? Because I don't get it. Personally, like I said, I've got a football team. I move. I'm one person who's very humble. I move. I know it's difficult to say I'm humble and even say it, but I move in the compounds. I've got players who come from all these compounds. You can tell me about Chipurukusu, Senior, come to Lusaka Garden, Bawe. I know these places. And even if you open the lines now, people will tell you, they see me there. I don't move with security. I'm quite senior in the party to a point where I should move with security. But I don't move with security because we don't even, we are not hated, whereby we are a loved party. Like I said, this is a party of intellectuals. We do think through what we do, and we are not forcing ourselves on the people. Eventually, the good will win. The issue of opposition saying we are one term is really neither here nor there, because the same UPND themselves, the same opposition, every day they say that HH will win because they're divided. Imanu Mambo was saying it yesterday. Lili Mutamzi was talking about it today. Everyone has said it. HH will win because the opposition, they know that.
The biggest opposition that you have is not the political party, is the people.
The people of Zambia voted for HH 2.8 million. So now, you have to remember that the 1.8 who never voted for him never died. They are there. So, sure, do you expect the 1.8 to disappear from the conversation? No, they'll still be there.
That's still with you. The 1.8 are still with you.
We are going to hit bigger numbers. What happened was the PF, during their time, made sure that voter registration in Southern Province, Western, was not well done. So
you've done it well now in Southern Province.
It was open, because the way it was this year is that from 2021, Andrew, it was continuous registration. Anyone could register. From 2021 up, no one was stopped. No one can claim that the UPND blocked people to register, because from 2021 it was continuous registration. That never happened under the previous government. It was just blocks, and then those blocks, sometimes they'll come and register, but they haven't done analysis.
Does it explain why you've registered? There's more people that have registered in Southern Province?
Not really. Eastern had more. Actually, if you look at Luapula had a huge registration. Do you know why? UPND is very strong there. Yes, UPND is very strong in Luapula.
Is that why there are so many people?
We are going to win there. We are going to win. We've won all the by-elections there. Even the opposition MPs from there, Chitaru and others, are switching to, you've seen it, under Bill 7. They are switching. So Luapula had that.
They're switching to UPND.
You've seen them voting with us. So whether eventually they will apply to be adopted, it's up to them. But I think as long as
I wish we could pick cause, but we've run out of time.
Okay.
Mr. Shalala, your concluding remarks.
No, my concluding remarks is that the 4 years, Andrew, have been quite taxing. They've been quite trying. We started on a very low note. I think when I was coming to the media team, it was quite a barrage of attacks, insults, being told off, hey, you sold your intelligence for expedience and things like that. But I think I had a sense of purpose. I've been in politics for a long time. People don't know. I was in Unzaso 1996. I was very young. I think about 17, 18, 19, somewhere there. And I've been in politics ever since. Even UPND, I worked a lot. I was just next door here. Here where there's Diamond TV, if I'm not mistaken, there should be like a law firm next door here. So the time I was at the post, we would even do PVT for the post newspaper, and the opposition were doing the ruling party were doing their PVT next door. They were relying on us. I was involved in that. When I was in MMD, I was involved in the presidential campaign, and we did things like running social media for State House, running social media for MPs. So we learned. So our team, Max Umuwe, excellent media director, the young men like John, Sue, Ingombe, and others who are part of the media team have done quite a lot. It hasn't been easy. We don't do tantama in UPND. Sometimes we have to do on our own. But I think it has been worth it. It's something that I would do in another lifetime if I was asked to be part of this media team. And it's even possible that I might see myself continue even beyond the next year, because if I wanted, I would have just said, okay, maybe let me be a PS or a minister or something. But I still feel that Zambians need all this kind of information. I want to avail myself in that role even beyond the election. So we are a very hardworking media team. We are reactive for a reason. You're not supposed to be just proactive. You need to respond to people. You need to make sure the right information is out there. And we are very sure that the mandate will be given to us next year. Not arrogantly, but because of what we've put in place, both long-term and short-term.
UPND consultant, Mr. Oliver Shalala, thank you so much for making the time to